After working in human services for many years, my career shifted to writing and administering grants. For over 13 years, I wrote local, state, and federal grants ranging from $500 to several $1 million with a success rate of over 80%. As the executive director and sole grant writer of a nonprofit agency, I wrote and received $5.9 million in grants. I've also served as a federal grant reviewer for 4 departments, and I reviewed and scored over 31 million in national grant applications. I became interested in grants early in my career when I was working with homeless, runaway, and gang-involved teenagers and low-income families. I quickly learned the importance of gathering data and having realistic and attainable goals for programs. I realized I wanted to be the person who was developing and designing the programs. Soon after that, I had to write a couple paragraphs about the work we were doing for upcoming grants, and that is how my career in grant writing began. What is a grant? Most people think of a grant as everything that is listed here. Yes, a grant is definitely all of those words and many others. But the most important word to describe a grant is relationship. A grant is a relationship between a funder and an agency or business. The relationship is started, grows, and builds with ongoing performance, and if done correctly, a relationship may provide continued funding. The main goal is to create a solid relationship with the funder. Of course, a written application is important, but an application is only half of a grant. The other half is the relationship that you build with a funder. This is a true story. Years ago, I went to an event for nonprofits, and several foundations were seated in different sections throughout the room. As each foundation was called, the representative stood up, took a couple minutes to introduce themselves to the audience, and explain the types of programs or projects they were interested in financially supporting. I looked around and knew each of them, but there was one foundation I did not have a relationship with. At the break, I went over to the woman, introduced myself, handed my business card, and told her about the work we did. A few weeks later, she called me and told me to apply for one of their grants. The application was an easy fill-in form that took about a half an hour to finish. We received $10,000 from that one handshake. It was as easy as that. Before we get too far into grants, I want to stress an important point. Grants definitely contribute to an agency's success, but they cannot be the only source of funding. In addition to grants, a financially healthy agency or business generates income from a product or services, creates connections with corporate donors and faith-based organizations, develops relationships with private donors and generates bequests or endowments, and holds special fundraising events. Fundraising efforts should include mass marketing, that is online and direct mail, a strong online presence through a website and social media outlets, and other supports such as in-kind donations. Ideally, the board of directors should be strong stewards of the agency and be committed to and able to raise at least 10% of the annual budget through their connections with small businesses, corporations, and individual donors and stakeholders. This list shows the types of organizations that can receive grant funding. Most grants are for nonprofit agencies that have a 501c3 determination letter from the IRS, which states it is recognized as exempt from federal income taxation. So how do you know which entities are eligible to apply? You need to read the instructions thoroughly to find an explanation of eligible organizations. The funder may also have more detailed instructions listed on their website. A big question people have is how to find grants. Most local banks and credit unions have foundations which will usually post their grant announcements on their website or social media. When you are first starting out with writing grants, you want to approach local foundations that are located in your region. State and federal grants are a little different. One way to learn about those grant opportunities is to visit the department's website and subscribe to receive their email notifications. A great way to find grants is through an online database. Libraries will sometimes have a membership in an online system. You can call around to local libraries to ask who has a membership available for public use. Using the database, you can search for keywords about the types of services you provide, and available grants will appear. Another way to learn about grants is through networking events. and grants.gov is a website to find federal grants. For most grants, the life cycle starts with building a relationship with a funder. A funder can be a foundation, business, or department that is giving the money. An agency submits an application, and if the proposal is accepted, a grant award is given and the recipient implements the program or project. Most funders will want a final report. The last stage is promoting the success of the program while acknowledging the funder. If done properly, a relationship with a funder can be ongoing. I've mentioned the word instructions, but you will not see instructions for grants. You will see different acronyms: an RFP, request for proposals, an RFA, request for applications, a NOFA, notice of funding availability, or a NOFO, notice of funding opportunity. Usually an RFP or RFA is for local and state funding, and a NOFA or NOFO is for federal funding. I will use the term RFP for the rest of the presentation. It is a set of instructions that you must follow. Your first few grants will take more time to write than most other grants, since it is the first time you are formulating answers to questions. If you have already gathered all of the documents that we will discuss in the final section, a good estimate is 5 hours to complete most basic grants. Large state and federal grants can easily take a month and a half working full-time. For some local grants, you will breeze through the application in 30 minutes because they ask for minimal information. Ideally, you will hear back about most grant applications within 3 months. Some funders may wait 6 months or much longer, and for some, you may never get a response. You want to save all correspondence with funders, the good news and the bad news. When you receive many grants, it can get confusing, so you want to save the award letters. If your application is rejected and they give feedback, save that for your records since it is valuable information.